This podcast is part of the Big Heads Media Podcast Network. Go to bigheadsmedia.com for more great podcasts.
And now, on with the show.
Hey everyone, welcome to
We're watching here. We're watching here.
This is Opinionated Movie Talk with Chris and Perry. My name is Chris Williams. With me, he is the Andy Samberg to my James Corden, Perry Seibert.
That's a push. That's fine. If you switched them, it wouldn't be any better or worse. I can live with that.
No, I like Andy Samberg, and James Corden to me is I just have a visceral reaction when he shows up in anything.
I think James Corden can actually act, but has been encouraged not to.
He just the carpool karaoke, everything he does late night just is like nails on a chalkboard to me. A little better than Fallon, but yeah, it's just
that's an understandably low bar you have described.
He is to TV what I'm blanking on the name now. The guy from Eddie Redmayne is to film. He is to TV what Eddie Redmayne is to film for me. Just they show up on screen and I can't deal with it. But the reason I brought them up is obviously they are the Best Actor nominees. Two of the Best Actor nominees for a Golden Globe. Best Actor in a Motion Picture, Musical, or Comedy. So the Golden Globes were announced recently, and yeah, Perry, I don't know about you. I have barely followed them, and looking down the list, I feel like there's a reason for that.
Yeah, the Golden Globes exist only to be a TV show.
Yeah.
They are a colossal joke. I mean, they really don't matter at all. And even the fact that they split it into comedy and drama seems to make that clear to me. Yeah. I mean, to be fair, that's a holdover from, if you know the history of the Golden Globes, it was three categories. It was comedy, drama, and musical for years and years and years. And it wasn't until probably the late 60s or something that they collapsed comedy and musical together, just because there weren't enough musicals being made anymore. And so it's a vestige of an era that's been dead for decades that we still have this. They should just collapse them together again and just have one category. Or even more interesting, if you don't want to give up the star power, nominate 10 people and things in each category.
But then we wouldn't have known that The Martian was a comedy.
Exactly.
So.
Exactly. It's ridiculous that any television show an hour long is a drama.
Yeah.
It's just...
We are actually not talking about the Golden Globes today.
Thank God.
We are going to continue our best of 2020, or our 2020 wrap up. These might not be the best of 2020, but end of the year, kind of catching up on things in the new year. And it just so happens that our first episode of February in Black History Month, we're going to look at three new films from Black Voices. We're going to be talking about Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, One Night in Miami, and Judas and the Black Messiah. I'm really excited to get in this conversation. These are three films I think are going to be really interesting to talk about. But first, Perry, what have you been watching?
What have I been watching? Well, I tried to do a deep dive through what was sitting on HBO Max.
Okay.
Looking deep, just put it on A through Z and scrolling through and trying to figure out, what haven't I seen in a while? What did I never get around to? And sure enough, last Saturday night, Chris, I landed on something I hadn't seen in 15 years. Something I'd always meant to get back to. Something that had been traditionally hard to find. Something that at the time seemed remarkably on point and really smart. And 15 years later, it's nearly spooky how prescient it was in so many ways.
What is this?
This would be Mike Judge's Idiocracy.
Oh, yes.
Which I only saw I never even saw that in the theater. I saw it when it first came out on home video.
No one saw that in the theaters. That was like,
it got buried.
Yeah, that had no opening weekend whatsoever, except in maybe 2 theaters in Austin. That was crazy how they buried that.
And boy, yeah, it's still real good.
Oh yeah.
I hate the term holds up. I don't think that's a thing. I hate that terminology. I hate what it implies. It's still great. and terribly underseen, and I had no idea it was sitting on HBO Max. So if you're an HBO Max subscriber and you have not seen Idiocracy, you have homework. You're welcome.
It is a joy to sit through that movie. I've seen that one 2 or 3 times, and it is a pleasure. And yeah, it gets sadly more resonant every year from the first scene on. Like that very first explanation of how it goes into dystopia. It's not even satire anymore. That's documentary.
It's interesting that I also saw I rewatched Network fairly recently with my oldest daughter, and as I was watching Idiocracy, I thought, oh, these were the only 2 films that got it right. They saw the dystopian future and made them funny and on point.
Yeah.
And very dark.
Network was one I watched for my first time a few years ago in a class I was taking on films about the media. And I remember watching it thinking, I thought this was supposed to be satire. And like it was so right on. Yeah.
Yeah, I always said that the election of Trump was the first time reality got away from that film. Like that was the first time it felt like, oh, you didn't see this coming. But you got everything else right, and it's still really on point. I'm not saying it's a film that doesn't have anything to say about right now. But yeah, Network is brilliant.
And then Idiocracy got the election of a big wrestling superstar, right? So
I mean, it only could have worked better if the president in Idiocracy was the star of Ouch My Balls. That's the only way that the film could have been more on point.
Oh, I need to watch that one again. I do enjoy that one quite a bit. I like all of Mike Judge's movies, actually. I really liked Extract. I think that was the last one he directed. I thought that was a lot of fun. But they always seem to fall through the cracks and then become these little institutions. Like Idiocracy is tossed about by everyone these days. I hear Idiocracy all the time, so I'm glad that movie finally found an audience. That is on HBO Max. Idiocracy, it's what Perry craves. And I've been watching recently. Well, the movie I saw most recently is not notable for what it is, but how I saw it. So this Saturday evening, my son turned 9 years old about a week ago. And my wife and I were trying to figure out, what are we going to do to celebrate his 9th birthday? What can we do that's safe? What can we do where maybe we just take a few of his friends with him, like his cousins? So we decided to rent a private theater at our local AMC for him to take a few of his buddies. And this past Saturday, we made our first trip back to the movies in a year. And it felt good to be back. And they had a nice selection of movies he could choose from. I was really hoping we could go with Raiders of the Lost Ark or Back to the Future, but he's a little too young for that. War with Grandpa and Jurassic World were right on the list, and I was terrified he was going to pick them. I did not want War with Grandpa to be my return to the movie theaters. Instead, he chose The Karate Kid, which we had actually watched a few weeks ago. He'd been kind of interested in Cobra Kai, and he's not really of age for that. So I was like, we'll watch Karate Kid. You'll like this. And he loved it, so we got a bunch of friends, went and saw The Karate Kid, and I mean, there was the joy of returning to a movie theater, being able to sit in a room where the lights go off and your attention is just directed on the screen, and it smells like popcorn, and it's wonderful. And then just the joy of realizing, Karate Kid is a movie that is a joy to watch with a group of kids. I really like Karate Kid. It is so much better than I had remembered when I revisited it a few weeks ago. I thought that it is not the best John G. Avildsen sports movie. That is, of course, Rocky V, but Karate Kid really works. I still really love Mr. Miyagi and Daniel LaRusso, and I was glad that was my first trip back to the movies. So, have you done any of these private rentals or anything?
I have not.
It is worth
I'm not
doing.
opposed to it. I just haven't had a reason yet. But I promise, as soon as we do, we will talk about it here.
It was fun. It was a little bittersweet though, because it was exciting to go back to the movies, but it was 7:00 on a Saturday night, and there were maybe 15 cars in the parking lot. One person in line of me at the concession stand. The concession stand was, they handed you everything. They put the butter on the popcorn and everything. And then at 9:30, the movie's out. The lobby is dark and empty, and it was bittersweet because you're like, oh, I don't know what the future is for this, but it felt good to be back. And maybe movies are actually the safest place to be right now because they are totally empty. So I have no clue.
If your bubble's tight, yes, it's probably pretty safe.
Yeah. Do you have any opinions on The Karate Kid? Is that a movie? You were
Karate Kid plays.
Yeah,
it works. It is old fashioned in the best sense of the word. And it's not. I mean, it's hard. It's weird to talk about how people will react to The Karate Kid having never seen it. It's not Rocky.
Mm-mm.
It really isn't. It is not the same story. It's yes, there are parallels to be sure, but it just works. It's a really tight script written by the guy who went on to write the Taken.
Oh, I did not know that.
Screenwriter.
Wow, I did not know that.
This guy understands structure, and I have of all the '80s boy actors, I have the softest spot for Ralph Macchio. I always thought he was certainly head, shoulders, knees, and toes above C. Thomas Howell, who I could never stand, even at that age. But he's very good in that. And yeah, Pat Morita, got an Oscar nomination and earned it and deserved it. He's very good. The one scene that he gets it for, the scene he gets it for, if you've seen the movie, that's that could have been done really badly, and it isn't. It's done really well.
Yeah,
it is a shameless injection of backstory and emotion that stops the movie cold to do it, and it plays beautifully.
Well, and I've been watching Cobra Kai, which I don't know if you've seen any of that. It's on Netflix.
No, I have zero interest.
Okay, it's
I know you're a fan, but it means literally nothing to me.
It's very entertaining, but it does it has that mentality that a lot of kids films have these days, where kids films and sports films have to have this, where every second there is something exciting or some twist that happens. And Karate Kid, it was so refreshing to watch that and realizing, oh, that's not what this is. This is a very patient movie, and it actually, takes its character seriously. It makes you wait for the karate to happen, and it was very enjoyable to watch. And I'm not going to say movies are back because it might be another 6 months before I get back in a theater, but we'll see. It was nice to be back for that one night. So, but we're going to shift attention to 3 films you can see on a variety of streaming services right now. And we're going to start with Netflix's Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. This is based on the play by August Wilson. I'll read the IMDb synopsis, which is: during a recording session, tensions rise between Ma Rainey, her ambitious horn player, and the white management determined to control the uncontrollable mother of the blues. This stars Viola Davis and Chadwick Boseman. I knew nothing about this movie heading in. Perry, were you familiar with August Wilson's play before this?
I knew of this play. I had never seen it or read it, and I'm familiar with some of August Wilson's work. So I had an idea of what to expect going in, and I was very, very excited to watch Viola Davis do this. that was the big pull for me. I'm like, I know what this part is, and I want to see this happen. And in that capacity, I was not disappointed in the slightest.
No, she's really great from that first scene on. It's interesting to watch her play this woman who knows exactly the industry she's in and what people are going to do with her music, and wield the power that she knows she does have. That was fascinating to watch throughout the movie. I really thought she was really good.
My only complaint, and this isn't a complaint because I hate this complaint. I can't believe I'm going to express this first about this. It's pretty stage bound. And that's for a reason. You want to, I mean, this is, so for some backstory production wise, this is the first of a giant deal that Denzel Washington has to bring August Wilson's plays to the screen. Mm-hmm. And this was originally set up at HBO. It's moved to Netflix. This is the first one of those. And so, he is going to make sure that you hear August Wilson's dialogue, which is beautiful and poetic.
Yeah.
and rhythmic and wonderful, but I will admit, you spend a long time in one place mm-hmm. listening to people talk, and I don't have a problem with that. It's not a complaint for me, but I will say, especially considering the films we're going to talk about going forward, and the next one we're going to talk about, and figuring out ways to change it up. To stage things more interestingly visually throughout is a help. I wish there was some more of that here, but that said, I'm not going to complain about listening to dialogue this good.
No, I had the same note on that. It is a movie that when you watch it for 15 minutes, you realize you can tell this was based on a play. And it takes place in basically a recording studio and the green room in the basement. The two locations, and they occasionally, maybe jump outside to an alley or something. But even the performance styles feel very theatrical to me.
Yeah.
Very, very big. And it's because they have this dialogue to chew into. That didn't bother me. It was very riveting throughout, but it did really feel like, this is basically what I would see if I went to a theater and saw this on stage. Like, I would not see anything that was much different, except I probably wouldn't see Viola Davis and Chadwick Boseman in this.
Exactly.
I would love that. But no, it is a movie that held my attention. The staginess of it didn't bother me, or stage-boundness of it didn't bother me. I don't think they open it up as well as they can, but I mean, when you have actors tearing into this material, that's, get out of their way if you need to, that was fine.
Absolutely.
And I think it is a movie with a lot on its mind. Like, it's really about the way black artists were exploited by white artists who, would set up the recordings and then, do whatever they wanted with the music. And you have this tension between Ma Rainey and Levy, her trumpet player. And she's been around. She knows what's going to happen to her music. She knows the position she's in. She knows where her power is, and she also knows what's going to happen the instant she steps out of that recording session. And then Chadwick Boseman plays Levy, and he is still in that, very vigorous but maybe kind of naive stage where he thinks, he's going to be the one to break through, and he's going to be the one that, gets that shot to stardom. And you kind of watch what happens and the fallout of that. And the tension between them as they navigate for power is really, really fascinating to watch. I really enjoyed watching Davis and Boseman together, and watching Boseman was the thing that stuck with me, because he was filming this probably when he was aware of how sick he was, and he throws everything into this performance. It is a very electric performance.
Yeah, yes, it is about all those things, and for me, the thing that I find most fascinating about it is this. The problem is that both Ma Rainey and Levy need each other, mm-hmm. and it's this sort of, they each have what the other needs in order to move forward in the culture and in the future of race relations. Like they don't, she does need his understanding of what people want, and he's right, as the story proves out right to the very end.
Mm-hmm.
But he does not, as much as you realize the character has experienced horrific racism, he doesn't understand how systemic it is.
Yeah.
He doesn't see that. And that's fascinating that August Wilson would write these two characters this way, and to show that if only Ma were a little less prideful, and if only each of them were a little less prideful, they would be much better off than where they are when the story ends. And if you don't know the real history of Ma Rainey, check it out. Do some homework. It's worth it. She's a fascinating figure in the history of music.
These 3 movies this week were really it was wonderful to watch them because all 3 of them were stories I was totally unfamiliar with, the people involved in them. This was one I did not know who Ma Rainey was or that she was a real person before I saw this movie. And at the end of the movie, you get a little glimpse of that. And I was kind of taken aback. I'm like, oh, she was real. I didn't know any of this. I mean, what did you think about Boseman? Because I thought that was just a fantastic performance. And I don't know if a lot of it is just power generated too by knowing it's the last time we're going to be seeing him on screen. But he has 2 monologues in particular that they are so powerful to watch. Particularly the one where he talks about watching his mother endure really horrible treatment.
Yes. He's very good. For me, what I will always remember about Chadwick Boseman is he was great, and he didn't need to be talking to be great. He was a wonderful physical presence in all sorts of ways. I mean, if you ask me, when I hear Chadwick Boseman's name, the first thing I think of is the dance he would do just before stealing a base as Jackie Robinson in 46. That's so good. It's this wonderful physicality, and he's got it. And not that he wasn't great talking too. I'm not saying that he finished when he opened his mouth, but I mean, I bought him as James Brown on stage because he could do that. I remember him. I remember the bearing and the presence in Black Panther more than I remember anything he says. And here it's the same way. It's the way he prowls around that practice room. He's always moving, which is really smart for the character and for the actor. I mean, the like I said, this August Wilson was a great playwright. I feel stupid saying that, obviously, and this is a great play of his. So yes, the words are amazing, and I know he's a good enough actor to deliver that. But yeah, what I'll remember is, I just remember him stalking in that basement, so full of energy that he can't stop, and then I really enjoy the seduction sequence for the same reason.
Yeah,
when he seals his own doom by hitting on Ma Rainey's girlfriend, that's a great scene. Yeah. That's a great scene.
Yeah, he's very energetic. Like he doesn't stop talking in this movie, so he does have plenty of dialogue to tune into. But like you said, he's always moving too. Like he doesn't stand still, and it kind of made me nervous, like when people move that much. But it's really just a solid performance, and it just made me very sad to think that's the last time I'm gonna see him on the screen. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's a ton to say about this. This is a movie that I'd really recommend people to see without, kind of having to go over everything that's in it. But I mean, the director Gregory Wolf, or George C. Wolf, I'm sorry. I'm looking at his IMDb. He has not done a lot of movies, and he helms this very well.
Yeah, it's solid, and like you said, Denzel's a producer on it. There were a lot of people overseeing this to make sure it was going to be done right. I'm not saying that to diminish what Wolf does here in any way. I just saying he had a system behind him that wanted to make sure this was getting done right, and there was a reason he was chosen, I'm sure, and you can see it. It totally works. I love how for having such little, so few physical spaces to be in, I never question when this is taking place.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really brilliant job of costuming and art direction. I know exactly where I am, both time wise and that I am in the city. It works. Yeah, it's good. It's good. Watch it. It's good.
Yeah, and bringing up Wolf real quick too. I didn't realize. I like I said, I have his bio up. He's a Broadway director and producer. So he was involved with Angels in America. So that is a really good fit for bringing this play to the screen. And he does a good job. He knows when to get out of the way. Now, one thing I think as we seek into the next movie, you had mentioned the stage boundness of this, was the one thing you noticed. I think that's the best way to kind of put it. It didn't bother either of us, but, it's very easy to notice this was based on a play. Did you feel that same thing with One Night in Miami?
Okay, yes, but differently. I mean, the disadvantage, of course, is, I knew they're based on plays.
Mm-hmm, sure.
So you sort of can't help but pay attention to that. But the difference between the two when it comes to that is the style of the writing itself, of the actual dialogue. Ma Rainey, feels like spoken poetry.
Mm-hmm.
It is dialogue with a capital D, and that's not a knock at all. It is what it's supposed to be. It is a performative thing. And One Night in Miami does this brilliant thing. I suppose we should set it up. It takes place the night that Cassius Clay wins the heavyweight title from Sonny Liston. Sam Cooke, Malcolm X, Jim Brown, and Cassius Clay are all in Miami that night, as they were in reality. And the play was a fantastical look at this conversation that could have happened between the four of them that night. What I love about the movie version is that, and I want to give full credit to Kemp Powers, the writer of both the play and who adapted himself, also the writer of Pixar's new film Soul.
Mm-hmm.
So Kemp has had a very good end of the year. Kemp Powers does this brilliant thing where he uses our collective memories of each of these four fantastic figures and lets that weight just sit there, and he doesn't feel the need to explain very much, and he uses them as a particular stance of how African American masculinity can be expressed in the culture at the time, and how it could be expressed going forward. And all of that is done by giving these guys incredibly natural dialogue to speak. This is not floridly written like Ma Rainey is. This feels this is much jokier. It's much lighter. And not to say that it's light, it's just, it sounds like conversation. It does not sound like dialogue with a capital D. And that's really smart, is to take away, to not beef these four guys up with the weight of their histories, but to make them just guys.
Yeah.
I mean, but they're there. I know who the four of them are by far at every point, and I don't forget, but he doesn't feel the need to lean into it, which is fantastic.
No, this is a movie I kind of was hesitant to visit, just because there's this tendency when you deal with these iconic figures, you get, 2 hours of an impression, and I didn't want that, and I was kind of dreading that. But I think one thing that's really canny, and I don't know if it was a choice that was in the original play or if Kemp Powers wrote that into his screenplay, is it starts with each of these men on their own. You see Cassius Clay winning a fight in England, and you see each of them kind of navigating something, and you get to see them, and you have, it's Malcolm X, it's Jim Brown. But as they get together and they're in this hotel room, and they're these four very high profile people, they balance each other out, and it lets them just be the people. Like their celebrity kind of cancels each other out, and you can have them start to be humanized. Like I remember when Malcolm X, when they start portraying him, I was a little worried. I'm like, oh, is this just going to be, an impression of Malcolm X? And very slowly, very cannily, I think Kingsley Ben-Adir just really, he starts letting vulnerability creep in. There's a little uncertainty. He really humanizes him very well, particularly in the scenes, too, where he goes toe-to-toe with Sam Cooke, who Leslie Odom Jr. is just fantastic in this. And I really appreciated that they were able to reach beyond, the icons and the caricatures and have a real discussion using four icons who come across as human beings, just regular guys.
Yep. Yeah. So all that. In addition, for Kingsley Ben-Adir, I mean, I'm not so much worried about a Malcolm X impression as I am about a Denzel Washington impression.
Yeah.
That's a heavy, long shadow you gotta work out from under to do this. And boy, does he. It's really impressive because, as great as Denzel is in Malcolm X, and it's the best, it's still stunning to me he doesn't have his Oscar for that. Even if you watch Malcolm X now, there's still Denzel. There's a lot of Denzel star power there. And, the fact that Kingsley Ben-Adir is so less well known allows him to, we sort of let him be Malcolm. And he does not look like Denzel. And he does not sound like Denzel. It's a really impressive performance on a bunch of levels. In addition to being just really, he's certainly, I would argue, of the four of them, he's doing the heaviest lifting plot-wise. I mean, it's structured where he is the one poking at all of them.
Yeah.
And he's the most manipulative. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean for plot purposes. He's the one who wants something from each of them. Boy, it's if the movie doesn't work, it's going to be his fault, and it works really, really well. So I want to give him all the praise in the world for that. And yes, as you were saying, Leslie Odom Jr., who, man, the first scene that you see him perform, I had to stop and go, I wondered if he was doing his own singing, and he is. And I can't even begin to explain to you how much I love Sam Cooke. Sam Cooke's story is one of the most interesting in the history of American music. The best rock music music biography I have ever read is Dream Boogie: The Triumph of Sam Cooke by Peter Guralnick. Read it. just find yourself a copy and read it. It's amazing. And you get to learn some of it in this, but I am now dying for someone to snap up the rights for Dream Boogie and let Leslie Odom Jr. play this character for 6 or 8 hours in something, because he is so on. If you know Sam Cooke at all, I mean, I truly needed to look up on the first scene because I was curious if they had some tapes, because at the front of this, this is some boring music history. So you'll notice at the front of this, there's a credit to Abco Productions.
Okay.
Which is the company that was run by Alan Klein. Alan Klein, basically in the, I think it's late 50s, maybe early 60s, went to like 60, 61, 62, went to Sam Cooke and said, I'm telling you, the record label that you are signed to is keeping money from you. If you give me permission, I will go in and I will find it and I will make them pay you. And Sam Cooke said, okay. And Klein found, yes, hundreds of thousands, if not $1 million, that the label was just keeping from him. And so It set him up independently financially and earned him Sam Cooke's trust for the rest of Sam Cooke's life. Now, if you've heard the name Alan Klein before outside of the context of Sam Cooke, it's because he was the dude who some of the Beatles ended up signing on as manager when they didn't want to go with Paul's father-in-law at the time. And so he promptly completely ripped off both the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. He got them both signed and bled them for everything they were worth, and completely mishandled everything about them, and it's got years and years of lawsuits. That whole story is fascinating. It's not the story being told here. I shouldn't have digressed about this. That is not the story in this movie, but it's really fascinating history. I encourage you to go check it out. And if I haven't mentioned it, you should read Dream Boogie by Peter Guralnick, because it's fantastic and will tell you all about this earliest part of Sam Cooke's life. That out of the way, let's talk about how good Eli Goree is as Cassius Clay.
And that's the one where I feel like any actor taking that on would also be in a lot of danger, because Cassius Clay had a real, there was a particular way of speaking that could be very easily parody or fall into self-parody. And he somehow is able to capture kind of that sing-song way of speaking, but he doesn't depend on it. Like, he makes it feel natural. And what he really captures too is just how much of how young he is at this point. So he is not, he's on the cusp of being Muhammad Ali, and he captures really this vulnerability, this kind of uncertainty with what's the next stage I'm taking. Do I want to do this? Is this the right thing to do? And all those questions that just swirl in him. And he captures all of that while still being just as, swaggery and in love with himself as you'd expect. It's really a strong performance and fun to watch.
Yes, that's the thing for me, is that, Will Smith was fine. His Ali, I have no real complaints about his Ali, other than he's not funny. He's performative. He's funny when he's being funny in front of a crowd, but Ali was funny in life, and you get that here, and it is so joyful. Mm-hmm. He is the one who has the biggest real life shadow to try to figure out how to embody, and he does it. There's only a couple times where you hear him hit the accent really hard. and I let it go every time. I let it go both times. I'm like, that's fine. Yeah. You got to do it. This is not a problem. You just notice it because he wants to get the voice right. And it is great how much, how smartly the script plays with Ali and Jim Brown, the two biggest athletes in America. Mm-hmm. At that point, and what the two different approaches they took to their public personas and to their sports. Jim Brown was not flashy. He just did it and was the best, and intimidatingly so, where Clay wouldn't shut up and was and quite purposefully, as has been said in many an Ali biography and is said right here in the play. He learned everything he knew how to do from Gorgeous George. He picked it up from wrestling. He knows if he talks, people will pay. And that's, that the two differences between those two characters are fascinating in this context and play so beautifully into, yes, the central sort of collision between Malcolm X and Sam Cooke, where Malcolm knows that Sam is the most talented musician on the planet at that time and wants him to use his power to say something.
Yeah.
And the constant conversation and back and forth about what is your responsibility? Is it to be public, or is it to change economic lives? And is that a false choice? Can you do both? It's just great. And none of it plays out like we're saying. It just plays out conversationally.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like speeches outside of, Malcolm's got some big speeches, but we're used to Malcolm X speeching. So it doesn't feel out of place. I buy that Malcolm X was maybe like that. Sure. It does not feel stage bound in the way that Ma Rainey does. Not that it doesn't feel entirely on stage bound, but even then, Regina King, who directed this beautifully, because she's smart enough to like Ma Rainey, but doing it more, again, has a specific expression of time and place. I understand it's 1964. I understand we're in Miami. The decor of that hotel room is fantastic. Motel room is dead on. I know where I am. And I really appreciated how well she did that and how unobtrusively she does that. She's not showy about making it look like 1964. It just looks like 1964. Mm-hmm. And she knows exactly what to do with these actors. She gets brilliant performances out of all four of them. Yeah, I liked this a whole lot. Like it's one of the few films where I would say, if I know nothing about you, I would recommend this to you. Like I can't see anyone disliking this.
Yeah.
if you have even the slightest interest, yes, watch this. It's very entertaining.
It's very entertaining, but there are real ideas behind it too. I heard someone I heard someone knock it because their thing was, well, it's just a bunch of, civics history 101, civil rights history entry level, very talky, and I'm like, no, this is actually very canny in the way these discussions probably were happening just like this. And it is this question of, you have this talent, you have this audience, there is this fight going on right now. What is your role to play? And, Malcolm X has his opinions about what Sam Cooke should be doing. And Sam Cooke is very, sure that what he's doing is the right way to address this. And yet, neither of them are right, neither of them are wrong, and it's about that interplay of how they begin to see the other perspective and figure out, what that next step is and what is your responsibility with this talent to your community, especially when you've been afforded a stage that other people aren't going to have. You're going to be listened to while other voices are silenced. And those are really... it's very difficult to portray those conversations without feeling talky and kind of condescending or, preachy. And I think by centering it on four very charismatic, larger-than-life individuals, you have that way in. So it's always a thrill to watch. But they're also friends, so there's also that air that's being let out when they're, playing around or joking around with each other. And... yeah, it's always a joy to watch. You mentioned that you had to check it first and see if Leslie Odom Jr. Was the one doing his own singing. I have listened to the Hamilton soundtrack enough where I was like, oh, yeah, no, that's Leslie Odom Jr. doing his own singing. I was so happy because I have been waiting for him to have the same breakout that, like, Lin-Manuel Miranda has had or Daveed Diggs, who are both extremely talented and have gone on to some really enjoyable things, but he was the one I was waiting for. What's the thing that's going to pop for me after Hamilton for him? And he is so good, and the way he just nails that final scene on the Tonight Show is so good. That performance. Yep.
Yeah, it's a big old movie moment, and it works really, really well. It's yeah. If you're you can't screw up. Literally meaning you can't screw up. If you screw up, you're dead. Singing and change gonna come, and he delivers it big time. It's really good. I cannot think of anybody else who could have played it.
Yeah,
that's the praise.
And
he's absolutely perfect.
And I do think Regina King, like you said, she's really, really strong on this first outing. I think she has a little bit more of a knack for when to open it up too. Like, she knows when to just have the four men in that hotel room and let the conversations fly, and when it's time to follow them outside to go get a drink or, follow off on two of them. It opens the movie up a little bit more than Ma Rainey's was able to do. And I don't think it's one is better than the other, although I did enjoy One Night in Miami probably more. But it's just, I appreciate that opening it up.
Well, and even I love that even when she doesn't open up, even when they're in that room, mm-hmm. It's the blocking is so smart.
Yeah,
it is. And that's not, again, yes, it's not a comparison to Ma Rainey about directorial talent. It's also a function of the scripts. It's that, we talked about how in Ma Rainey, Chadwick Boseman's character doesn't stop moving. And that really is the blocking. Mm-hmm. He's constantly moving. He's approaching into people's spaces. That's what all the other guys just stand there for the most part. And, the way she blocks those four men in that room throughout is so, I mean, there's so often, if you're paying attention, that, you know, Malcolm's alone. Malcolm is separated from the other three often and during much of it. And there's that fantastic conversation, the sequence about 2/3 of the way through, the conversation between him and Jim Brown, where he's not even really capable of looking at Jim Brown during some of it, and you realize that that's really good. That's you are getting insight into how hurt Malcolm is in that moment, how much doing what he feels he has to do takes out of him. It's really good. Yeah. It's really good.
Yeah. It is good, and it is also on Amazon Prime for you now to watch. I've recommended it already to several people. It is a entertaining and very thoughtful watch. Do you have anything else to say about One Night in Miami, or?
Nope, that'll do it. I can't wait. Regina King proves that, like the old British directors who came up in like BBC TV in the 70s and 80s and went on to be like some of the best filmmakers of their generation. I'm looking at you, Stephen Frears. You know, she's been directing TV for almost a decade at this point, and learned well and applied everything she knew here. And I'm not saying that this looks like TV. I'm saying she's learned how to use her actors and how to use her space, a limited space. It's really good. It's a very exciting first step.
She's becoming one of those people who, is there anything she can't do that kind of makes me jealous and angry and happy to watch whatever she does. Perry, why don't you give the intro to our third movie? Because it was not on my radar till you brought it up.
Judas and the Black Messiah, which is actually, not only is it on HBO Max today, it's in theaters today. You can go see this. This is directed by Shaka King, directed and written by Shaka King. It tells the story of Fred Hampton and William O'Neill. We actually talked about Fred Hampton really briefly last year, Chris.
Oh, really?
Fred Hampton is a character in The Trial of Chicago 7.
That is correct. Yes, you are right.
Yes. And this is a historical drama / psychological drama. Fred Hampton was the head of the Chicago Black Panther Party in the late 1960s. And Fred Hampton, I'm going to go ahead and spoil this part of it if you don't know. Fred Hampton was killed by police. It is widely believed that he was set up by the FBI. The FBI were certainly investigating, and that the Chicago police and the FBI worked together to make sure Fred Hampton was killed. And this movie is about the mole who the cops put in to infiltrate the Black Panther Party and report back about everything Fred Hampton was doing. The two leads here are Daniel Kaluuya, who plays Fred Hampton, and Lakeith Stanfield, who plays William O'Neill. That's right, the two guys from the most memorable scene in Get Out together again. Mm-hmm. And this is and right there, pushing Lakeith Stanfield around is Jesse Plemons, who plays the FBI officer who is his contact. And it's one of those things where I don't want to give any more of the history, because let's put it this way. I knew the Fred Hampton story pretty well. Nothing there surprised me. I did not know the William O'Neill story. And there turns out to be a remarkable amount of weight and power at the end of that film when you see the effect in real life about what that these events took on William O'Neill. It's a hell of a movie. It's really good. It has this amazing. It reminded me in the best possible ways of like The Irishman and The Departed. It's got this great look at what it costs to be a rat, mm-hmm. what that does to you, and at the same time, it humanizes a revolutionary, and not in a cartoonish way, and not in a way where it's like he's one and then where he's this boisterous rebel and then this quiet dude. It's all there all the time in Daniel Kaluuya, who is superb in this. Yeah. Just outstanding in this. He's he's quickly become one of my favorite young actors. I think there's very little he can't do. After Get Out and Queen and Slim and this, he knows how to vary what he is doing from film to film and find a real person at the center of whatever he's playing. It's really impressive. I'm kind of just gushing and not making a lot of sense, I fear. Chris, tell me what your response was.
I like I said, I did not know this movie was coming. Like, this was not a movie that was on my radar until you brought it up. And then I looked and I saw the trailer and I was like, okay, yeah, I could watch this and see. I'm right there with you. I think, first off, what really struck me about this and why I think it's an important movie that I would recommend to pretty much anyone right now is I did not know much about the Black Panther Party at all growing up. My wife and I were actually talking about this last night because I was telling her about the movie, and her and I both had the same statement where the first and probably biggest impression we got of the Black Panther Party was Forrest Gump. Like, it was not, it's not something that was talked about in the families we grew up in. And if it was, they were portrayed as a terrorist organization. You know what I mean? In the churches and stuff we grew up in. So to see it portrayed as an organization that is feeding children and working to make, lives better, that was eye-opening to me. That was really fascinating to watch. It is interesting because the title obviously has these biblical allusions to it, right? Which is, but knowing, being someone who grew up in the church too, you could see how it was this, this almost Christ-like approach to racial justice, which is love people, feed people, love your community, feed your community. And I had not heard that side of the Black Panthers. That was fascinating to me, and I want to know more about that. There's a documentary about the murder of Fred Hampton on Netflix, apparently, that I'm going to have to be checking out. Acting-wise, I don't know how you could get two better actors. Three better actors if you include Jesse Plemons, who is one of my favorites. Daniel Kaluuya, he has two scenes I keep coming back to in particular. The first is where he's delivering the speech. I believe it's in a church or a city hall, where it's... he's getting the crowd all riled up. He's talking to them, and it's powerful, and it's magnetic, and it's charismatic, and it is exactly the type of scene you would hope to see someone play when they're playing an icon like that, a leader. But he also has a very small moment where he's getting out of jail, and he learns that he's going to be a father, and he doesn't say a single thing aside from maybe one or two words, but just the look he gives when he finds it out, it sells everything he is feeling in that moment. And he can play both that big, charismatic moment and that tiny, very human, joyful moment so well. And yeah, he's someone I've been liking since Get Out as well. Lakeith Stanfield is always someone I love watching. I was a big fan of Sorry to Bother You. And what I like about him is his character, Bill O'Neill, is when, in certain circumstances, he's very quiet. And when he is talking a lot, it's very much a performance. It's him, kind of selling himself as the security expert, this person who's on this, who's someone he's not. But every time you can just glimpse this terror and this desire to survive in his eyes. Like, he can be placid on the surface, sitting there smoking a cigar or sitting calmly in a car, but there is just something terrified behind him where you just feel every fiber of him is vibrating under that. And it's so there fantastic.
Even in the opening sequence before that start, before we have a reason to believe that's just how he is.
Yeah.
He is always fearful. Yeah.
Yeah. One thing I was a little unsure of when I finished the movie was whether it bothered me that we don't learn much about who Bill O'Neill really was. Like, they don't follow him home much. They don't tell us what his family situation is or anything like that. And I didn't know at first if that was something that bothered me. But he is a character who is really concerned with what is going to happen to him right now. He is a person who wants to survive. And I don't think as he's portrayed, he has the self-awareness to be thinking much about the consequences of what he's doing, the cost of what he's doing. And so I think I came down to it didn't bother me because I don't know that he would be able to express those things. He's a character who is trying to survive and doesn't realize what it's going to cost him.
It never even dawned on me. So I was already there. That wasn't even an issue for me. Obviously, the movie worked for me. It must have worked at exactly that level for me. It never even dawned on me that we don't know much about him. I felt like I knew everything I needed to know for the story that they wanted to tell here. So yeah, that's I agree with you without having the same thought.
and Jesse Plemons, like there is something about him where he can look like, the more he looks like just a clean-cut good guy, the creepier and more unsettling he gets.
That face is so pinched. It's so bulldogish. It's yeah, and I would like to a big shout out to Dominique Fishback, who plays Deborah, who is Fred's significant other in the movie. She's really good, and they really smartly use her in the screenplay. She is the one who she is the one who recognizes and articulates Fred's better angels right at the top, and not in a way that's obnoxious, not in a way that you realize that's what they're sort of setting up, but just in a way that lets you believe how much he would care about this woman for the rest of the movie. It's really smart, and she's very good. It is a movie that wrestles with so many of the same issues as One Night in Miami, and of the three films we've talked about tonight, it's the one that feels like a film.
Yeah.
It's the one that really feels like a movie. This is not stage bound, even with some sequences like the one in the church that are huge dialogue set pieces. It never feels tied down. It feels incredibly cinematic. I like this film a lot, Chris.
I really, I like it, and it's just one of those ones I've been thinking about it throughout the day. The only sticking point I had for me is the makeup work on Martin Sheen as J. Edgar Hoover. Doesn't quite work for me, but J. Edgar Hoover's real look didn't work for me, so maybe that's a thing. It took me out of the movie whenever Martin Sheen showed up.
Really? Because, once you've seen DiCaprio's J. Edgar, I think any other J. Edgar is perfectly acceptable.
I have not seen DiCaprio's.
Oh, how lucky you are. That movie's awful. And, the makeup job on DiCaprio and Armie Hammer is just atrocious. Oh,
but I should
it's not good.
I should also specify, I'm only thinking of Martin Sheen in the few scenes where he's addressing a crowd, because he does have a scene with Jesse Plemons where it is kind of Jesse Plemons' character's chance to grow some sort of moral backbone, and he doesn't do it. And I think Martin Sheen is really good in selling the despicableness in that scene.
Yeah, well, this is not a knock on Sheen's performance.
Yeah, it's the makeup.
This is a knock on the makeup.
Yeah.
Let's be real specific about
Sheen's
this.
really
yes,
good.
Agreed.
And I do think, like you said, it hits a lot of the same thematic points as One Night in Miami, particularly in how, and even back to Ma Rainey's, in how basically white people use money as a tool to turn the community on itself. There is a financial benefit that Bill O'Neill gets from this.
Yeah.
And, there is that question of, and we see this in our, even in our politics today, it's, do I just worry about myself and keeping myself going, or do I worry about the community I'm a part of? And that's one of the big questions in this is, are you willing to, are you so in it for your community that you would die for that? Or is it, I just need to get by? And those are really the two tensions you have between Bill O'Neill and Fred Hampton.
That is yes, one of the many at the core of it, but yes, certainly one of the absolute dominant ones.
Yeah, I really liked this. I had not expected anything from it. Like we talked about in a previous episode, there is still that part of me that's getting used to hearing, hey, this is going straight to streaming, which this is theaters and streaming. And there's still that little twitch I get, which is like, oh, then it can't be as good as a real movie, which I don't know why I get that, but it's there. And no, this is a movie. If it was in theaters, I would be telling you to run out and see it. It is in theaters. I'm telling you, use caution if you go out and see it. But it's right there on HBO Max, and you should be watching it on HBO Max. And I think more people are going to see this movie because it's going to be on HBO Max than they may have if it was just a theatrical release. I mean, it's going to get that promotion that this is out there. This is one of the new releases. See this instead of seeing whatever the Denzel Washington serial killer movie is. But yeah, this is a really, really good movie, and it stuck with me.
I saw it about a week ago at this point, and I've been living in it nonstop. Like it's cast a long shadow over a lot of stuff I saw at the end of the week. I'm like, I'm still thinking about that movie. I kind of want to go back to that movie. And I will say one last thing about how good it is. It does the thing that I have grown to loathe more than anything else with a movie like this, meaning a movie based on real life, where it does the thing where you actually see real clips of the real people at the end of the movie. And I will say that it figures out how to do it better than any movie I have ever seen, save maybe Walk Hard, which has the best credit cookie ever. But other than that, and that's a different category, this makes that work by saving something for that moment that's really strong and really effective in a way that in a way that it's truly, it's disquieting.
Yeah.
It's an excellent use of that device, and that is such a tired and lazy device that has become something that's automatic for directors. It's not something they do and use because they need to, and here he needs to and uses it really effectively.
100% agree. I actually think, I know Ma Rainey's shows Ma Rainey at the end of the movie. Does One Night in Miami, for some reason in my head, it has Malcolm X giving a speech? Am I remembering that correctly?
I have a different memory. I don't want to say what it is.
Okay.
I could tell you quite specifically what I think the last shot is, but I'm worried it would be a ruinous thing for people listening. And I don't wish to do that.
I'm thinking, I know for sure there are words put on the screen, and I think that's what I'm getting kind of confused. But like you said, most movies when this is done, it's kind of like a little honor the person you were talking about. It doesn't really have a thematic necessity. It's just there to say, hey, this was based on a real person. There they are. This movie, that button is there for a reason, and it lands a punch when it happens.
Yeah.
100% agree. I would recommend all three of these. You can stream them right now on Ma Rainey's is on Netflix. One Night in Miami is on Amazon Prime, and Judas and the Black Messiah is on HBO Max. Perry,
and in theaters.
You are right. What's funny is when I don't know if it's just the year has been bringing it more to my attention, but when I looked back at the running list I have for my top 10 films this year, I was amazed how many of them, which right now includes One Night in Miami and Judas and the Black Messiah, how many of them are really strong portraits of the civil rights fight, of the black experience. We haven't even talked much on this podcast about Steve McQueen made 5 movies about that this year, 5 or 6 that were really good. And then we did a whole episode on Defy Bloods. This was a really strong year for movies about the black experience.
Yeah, I think you're seeing the result of Get Out making a ton of money.
Well, I think that is one reason, but I think it's something in the air, and
Black Panther.
Yes, yeah.
Don't discount yeah, from a sheer, yes, I didn't mean for that to sound, awful. I meant just the you follow the money.
Yeah.
If these three movies taught us anything, follow the money. And when it's shown that films that might otherwise in the past be thought of as, oh, that's only going to be for black audiences, make hundreds of millions of dollars, guess what? People are going to start making those movies. Thank goodness. We need more stories, not less.
Yeah.
We need more storytellers, not fewer. And yeah, these are three good movies. One of them very good and one of them great.
Yep. Totally agree.
It was a pleasure to watch these movies and to talk about them.
I totally agree. We have one more episode coming up that will close off our 2020 catch-up. So we'll have that for you in 2 weeks.
Maybe.
Oh.
There might be more than one. Let's get. There's a lot of movies still coming.
All right. I'm excited to talk about them. But in the meantime, Perry, where can people find you?
You can hear me every Friday on the Lucy Ann Lance Show on WLBY in Ann Arbor. You can find me at Perry Loves Film. You can hear me occasionally at the Cathode Ray Mission podcast. We have a whole episode coming up at the end of the month devoted to Freaks and Geeks. I'm very excited about that one. And you won't find me in the theater just yet, but, if you, again, smell the battery burning on my remote control as I'm constantly scrolling through all these different services trying to find something to watch, that's probably me you're smelling.
Well, you can find me on Twitter at Mere Christianity. You can find my newsletter every week at criticisms.substack.com. And you can listen to my other podcast, Cross Culture Critic, which comes out about once a month. And in the meantime, we'll be back in 2 weeks.